Hey, it's Rob, and welcome to Axel's Garage. We're out here in the cold. It's cold. You can see my breath. And we got Pearl. Pearl is our 2003 Yukon Denali. Now, we bought Pearl because, well, she was cheap. And she had a lot of problems. And we figured we could fix problems. And we did. And some of those problems were really expensive. And some of those problems cost us a little bit. But we got Pearl running. And Pearl was supposed to be for my daughter Amanda. And Amanda got a job and bought something nicer than Pearl. So my wife decided she was going to use Pearl as her winter car, and we were going to put the IROC in hibernation for the winter. Good choice. Pearl turned out to be a decent vehicle. We cleaned her up and did some paint correction, clay bought her. We got everything done on the body except for the roof and the bumpers. We just ran out of warm weather, so we'll need to do that in the spring and give her another once over. We put lights, we put mirrors, we put some switches and some small stuff that needed attention. Pearl was very neglected. But it turns out that Pearl is getting a lot more use than we thought Pearl was going to get, so Pearl needs some attention. In the meantime, my wife says to me the other day, she goes, my low coolant light came on. So I went out there like a good husband, looked at her coolant reservoir, and it was pretty much empty. Dumped about 3/4 of a gallon of coolant in, closed the hood and walked away and said, "You're good to go, honey." Well, then about a day or two later, I noticed where she normally parks, there was a lot of wetness on the ground. So I didn't tell her about it. And a few days after that, she said my low coolant light's on again. So I took a look, and yeah, the whole entire bottom of the engine is covered in coolant, and it looks like it's coming from the water pump. But luckily, I'm a junk collector, and when we were cleaning out a garage for Mark over at Axel's East, there just happened to be a water pump with a fan clutch and a fan sitting on the shelf that was going to go in the dumpster. And I said, "Ooh, what is that for?" And it was out of a 04 6-liter Escalade. So I said, I'm going to take that home because we got a bunch of these vehicles, and we've had a bunch, and we've done a water pump job on these a lot. And we'll probably have more in the future. You know, I think they call them the GMT-800s. You know, these style trucks with LS engines, whether it be a 5.3, a 6-liter, or something bigger, who knows. Anyway, this one's got a 6-liter in it, all-wheel drive, which kind of kills the gas mileage. The water pump is out of a 6-liter Escalade, all-wheel drive, kills the gas mileage. But I just stuck it on the shelf, and lo and behold now, not even a month later, I need that water pump. So instead of buying one, we're just going to use the one that was on the shelf. We used one that worked. Okay, good. So all I had to do was buy gaskets, but because Pearl is getting so much use, and we think that Pearl is going to get a lot more use with all we got going on here at Axel's and in our family, I said, you know what? Let me check my stock in the garage, and sure enough, I had an upper and lower hose, and I think I had an AC belt, but I didn't have a serpentine belt, so I ordered a serpentine belt, I ordered gaskets for the water pump, and we're going to do the water pump, we're going to do an upper and lower hose, and we're going to do the belts, just so that we can know that we're starting. You know, it was a neglected vehicle, and we really didn't know a whole lot of the history of the vehicle other than some of what the brake problem was. So we're going to get that going today. Of course, it's middle of February and it's freezing out, but we got to do it because we can't drive the car the way it is. The water pump is completely leaking out the bottom weep hole, and it doesn't really hold coolant in it for more than a day or 2 or 3, and it's cold, always. You can see in here, Pearl's fairly clean in the engine compartment for an old neglected vehicle. And I didn't do any detailing, I didn't do any cleaning. The guy before me definitely didn't do any cleaning. But Pearl is pretty clean in here, which is kind of amazing. So I've done a detailed water pump, LS water pump job several times, so we're not going to go too far into detail, just a quick overview of how we get them done. Alright, so first thing we got to do here is just get access all this freaking plastic all over this. This cover off, that over there. Okay, and now with this main cover off, we got to get this air thing out. So it goes from the mass airflow to the throttle body. So we're going to disconnect it at the throttle body. We're going to disconnect it at the mass airflow. We're going to pull it off. We just got to be careful. We have a hose connected to it underneath over here on the side, so we want to pull that clip out just to make our lives a little bit easier. Two clamps nice and loose, and now I am just going to disconnect this little like Christmas tree radiator hose kind of clampy sticky there. Alright, so with that out of the way, you can see there are some plastic brackets that hold this little coolant hose, alright, onto the upper hose. And we just want to separate this little coolant hose from the upper hose and sort of tuck it out of the way. Don't need to disconnect it. That's some kind of, I think it's like an air bleed that goes into the bottom of the throttle body. Whatever it is, we don't need to touch it because it's not going to be in our way. All right, so now we have our upper hose with all these plastic clips on it. This clip holds that little hose. This clip holds that little hose, and it also Christmas trees into that air box thing. And this clip just Christmas trees into your upper fan shroud. So if you were just changing the water pump and weren't changing the hose, you could sort of bungee this out of the way like that, just to keep it out of your way, which I do on a regular basis. But we are doing the hoses over again. I just don't want to, like right now, you can take this hose off. What I don't want to do is spill coolant onto the belt, and that's because we need to get that fan clutch off, and spilling coolant onto the belt makes the belt slip a little bit, and then you have trouble getting the fan clutch off without the proper tool, and we're going to do it without the proper tool. So I'm going to grab a bungee or something, and I'm just going to bungee this out of the way, and I'm going to do it like I would normally do it, just so I can show you how to get that fan clutch off without the tool. So you can put a little bungee on it like that and get it out of your way. Now you got your fan shroud, upper shroud. Lower shroud you normally don't have to take off. All right, you got two bolts up on top of your shroud here, and that should be 10 millimeter. So with these two bolts out, all right, you got your shroud loose, and then you have 4 push clips. They're plastic push clips that separate the upper and the lower shroud. So 2 on either side. Just reach down there and pull those plastic push clips out. They look like this. I'm hoping that I'm getting everything on camera today. We do not have our normal lens. For like the last 6 months, I've been noticing a lot of spotting on my videos. More so when the sun is reflecting off of the lens, and a lot of people were commenting that my lens was dirty, and I'm going crazy cleaning the lens, and it's a 3-piece wide angle lens, and so there's 3 pieces of glass in it that you actually have to clean, and it wasn't making it any better. So I got, of course, the hardest plastic clip to get at is the one that's giving me a hard time. But anyway, and then I took the lens off completely, and guess what? It's like 1,000 times better. But I don't have that wide angle anymore, so I'm trying to get the shots in, and I got one plastic clip that is fighting me. You wouldn't believe. Alright, so after you get those clips out, you can just slide out your rubber shroud. Alright, and now you have access to your fan clutch. This one feels really nice and tight. Nice. Fan clutch. Okay, you have to separate it from the pulley. Alright, and the problem is the pulley is going to want to spin. So they make a special tool that you slide in there, and you can hold the pulley and turn the nut. I don't have the special tool. I don't use the special tool. What I use is a hammer, a wrench, and a pair of quick grip clamps. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this quick grip clamp, and I am just going to pinch the belt just below the alternator, just to put some extra tension on the belt. Doesn't ruin the belt. We're going to change it anyway, but I have done this several times, several dozen times. Okay, and always reuse the belt, and it was fine. So now you're going to take your wrench, whatever kind of adjustable wrench you can get to fit in there. I think this nut is something like in the 20s on the millimeters, but I use this Ford wrench. I should probably show you the wrench. I use this Ford style wrench. All right, put it on there, and you're going to give it a whack with a hammer, almost like you would be impacting. Right, this is an impact shot. The belt being on with the normal tensioner and that added tension that we use with the quick grip clamp should hold it enough where you can, and when it falls like that, it's loose. That's enough tension to hold everything in place so that you can now just spin this off. All right, the only thing to note is when spinning this off, don't drop it. All right, put a hand under the clutch and then spin it with your other hand so that when it falls off, you catch it and you don't break your fan blades, because the truck is what, 17, 18 years old? These fan blades are brittle from heat. This way you don't drop it. And that's the nut that you were putting that Ford wrench on. So our next step is taking the belt off. The belt off just from this tensioner right here, 15 millimeter. We'll get that belt right off. If you don't have a belt routing diagram on your cowl here, which we do, can I see it? That one, that one, that one, yep, I could see it. If you didn't have a belt routing diagram, take a picture of your belt routing. It can get confusing, more confusing than you could ever imagine. So a 15 millimeter on a breaker bar. Going to turn that belt down enough where you can get it off. So now you got everything out of your way where you can take your upper hose off, you can take your heater hoses off, you can take your lower hose off, and you can reach down and pull your AC belt off. The AC belt, hard for you guys to see, but it's got the same kind of tensioner, but instead of putting a socket on it, you're just going to use, it's got an opening for either a 3/8 or a 1/2 inch ratchet, and you just put it right on with a little extension, a little 3-inch extension, and pull that AC belt also off. The AC belt's got to go on first, because if you put your serpentine belt on and do your AC belt some other time, the AC belt's behind the serpentine belt, so it's got to whatchamacallit, It's gotta go on first. All right, so what I did here was I got my 2 heater hoses off, I got my lower hose to water pump off, and I got my upper hose to water pump off, just to start clearing out over here. So now, only other thing in the way is your belt tensioner. That's got 2 bolts, 15 millimeter. That's got to come off. Short one, long one. All right, long one goes on top, short one on the bottom. Try to remember that. And this should come off. Oh no, it's got a third. It's got a third long one. So what I'm gonna do, now it's got 3. So I'm gonna take this, flap it back over again. I'm gonna put my long one back in the top, and I'm gonna put my short one back in the bottom, so I know exactly which ones go where, and I'm going to set this to the side just like that. So now you got water pump bolts. You got 3 on each side, sort of in like a triangle shape. They look to be about 10 millimeter. Some of them can be rusted and they're pretty good. And that's just because it's corroded in there. Because I think these are like 15, 25 foot-pound or something like that. Something not real tight. So I'm going to pull it out like this, leaving the bolts in just to show you. All right, that's how junky some of them are. But then you take out another one and it's nice and clean. So I'm going to take this junky one, so that I got 3 on each side. 2 of the 3 are junky on this side, and on this side I got a junky one, I got a clean one, and I got a junky one. So I am going to take them over to the bench grinder with the Y wheel, and I'm going to clean them up, make them easy to go back in. All right, well, we got our gasket surfaces clean. You can see right down over there, I used a little wire wheel cup. I got my AC belt off. We pulled out the lower shroud. The lower shroud just pulls right up after you have the upper shroud off. And the only reason why we did that was to get down towards the lower hose. And we put a new lower hose on the radiator end. And that's about it. We're halfway there. So that lower shroud you don't have to pull out. That could stay in there. We only pulled it out just to make it easier access for the lower hose, to get that lower hose original clamp off. That looked like it might have been the original lower hose. It was a GM hose. Very rarely do you see a GM hose on a replacement. Gasket surfaces, like I said, I used a little wire wheel cup and just went in there, sprayed a little carb cleaner on it, and then wiped it down with a rag. The water pump bolts, you can see they came out nice. I cleaned them all up. You don't have to worry about different sizes. They're all the same length. So those are your water pump bolts. So now we got our lower hose in. When you pull that bottom rad support out, there's usually a lot of leaves and stuff stuck underneath it, so you clean all that stuff out. We could slip our AC hose on, put our lower shroud in, and we're on the home stretch for getting this back together. So this is the halfway point. So what I like to do here is wash my hands and get a cup of coffee and then continue on and throw it all back together. You could actually put your water pump in without the bottom shroud in your way or anything, which is really not in your way, but for us, our water pump has a fan and a clutch already attached to it because it's a used one that was pulled off of some car that was stripping down over at Axel's East. Like I said, it was an 04 Escalade with a 6-liter. So we're gonna put our bottom shroud back in because we're gonna have the fan and everything on it as we're putting the water pump in, so that's gonna be in the way. So take that bottom shroud and slide it back in. So I got my new gaskets. I got my pump that's got everything on it, which makes it a lot more of a pain in the ass. And my bolts. So what I'm going to do, just to even try to make it remotely manageable. It's going to be a pain in the ass to get on. It's usually not, real difficult, but this one's got everything on it already, which makes it much more difficult. So what I would normally do is, slide the bolts through and have them, hold the gasket in place. So, put 2 on each side, which is what I'm going to do, just to hold the gasket in place. I'll link the gaskets in the description. These are just Velcro gaskets. Nothing fancy. No sealer or anything required. Like I said, if you had a new clean pump, it would be much easier. And then I got see if a 6-inch extension is going to interfere with the fan blade. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a 3-inch and I just want to start the 2 bolts on either side, so I know I got my gaskets in place. See how one already fell back. Alright, so I got them just started in. See if I can move the camera around, give you a better view. Alright, so my top 2 started. My bottom hole will be lined up through the gasket. So I'm going to take the bottom bolt and I'm going to put some white lithium grease on it, because you saw how corroded everything was. So I'm just going to give it a little paint with some lithium grease, and I'm going to slide that one through the hole. All right, and I'm just going to seat it. And I'll take another one out. And I'll just put a little bit on. This way we don't have to worry about that corrosion until the next time. Got one left on this side. And we're just going to repeat that process through all 6 bolts. I'm not putting a ton of white grease on it. Something that I always do. Prevents that oxidation. Whether it be white grease or anti-seize. My line always is put a little lube on the bolts. Make it easier for the next guy, because the next guy may very well be you. wonder what JJ Fig is doing right now. All right, so once you got them all seated, you can torque them down in a crisscross pattern. Because I'm using an extension and a reducer. The factory spec is like 11 on the first pass and then 22 on the second pass. I'll do 15 and 25 on 11. 11, not 11, 15. That's what I set it for. And then I will bump it up to 25, 30 pounds. I'll probably go 30. I'm going to go to 30. Turn it down, and then I'll just do the same thing. Start with that top one on this side. 30. And then I'll do the bottom one on the other side. Like I said, without the fan and the fan clutch in the way, it's a lot easier. 30. And I'll come middle on this side. So now the water pump's in, bolted down. I could make my heater hose connections down here, and I could make my lower hose to water pump connection, or the thermostat housing connection, because the thermostat housing is part of the water pump. And I'll make it down on this side. Alright, so once the lower hose to water pump and the heater hose to water pump connections are made, time to throw the belt on. Refer to your picture or your diagram on the cow, whatever you have at your disposal. Alright. And the worst part about doing this is the belt has got that memory that's going to drive you bananas. See? And if it fits this loose, you're doing something wrong. I'm doing something wrong. Oh yeah, I'm routing it wrong. That's why. I might not have the wrong belt, I'm just routing it wrong because I thought I didn't have to look at it. I knew what I was doing. And I am wrong. It goes around the crank this way. Holy cow, did I have this completely wrong. Now, with tension on here, should be able to slide it over this guy right there. And while you got the tension off, make sure you're on all the pulleys. And now the belt fits. So I did have the right belt. See, that diagram is important. Alrighty, we're on the home stretch. Right. So now, slide upper shroud in. Make sure it sits into the lower shroud so that the plastic clip holes line up. And yep, I put a little lube on my bolts. And you could say what you want about that, but I'm sure everyone has seen that meme. You know, a 10-minute job is one broken bolt away from a 2-hour or a 2-day ordeal, or whatever it is. Well, if you've been there and you've done that. Now these I'm not tightening down all the way until I get my 4 clippy dickies in, because these clippy dickies, you're going to pop them in and then you're going to press the middle in and they lock it in place. Okay, so now we're up to the upper hose. Upper hose, I got a worm gear clamp on that side, and I got one of those factory spring clamps on this side. I'm going to get rid of that. So here's our hose and hose. And now we got to try to figure out how to get these stupid brackets off. Need a little pick or something. Goes around here. I got my little air bleeder hose running along the little clips here. Airbox thing, whatever this is called, and slot it in place. So when it comes to filling these, people seem to overcomplicate them because of that air bleed thing that goes under the throttle body. Well, I ran out of battery, which gave me a chance to go to the store because I was out of coolant, or antifreeze, depending on what you call it. I get the full strength and cut it. But holy shit, 2 gallons was $39. When did antifreeze become more expensive than oil? Well, what I did when battery went dead was I just dumped a gallon, one of these empty containers that had to fill it up with water. I dumped a gallon of water in. Then I went and I picked up 2 gallons of antifreeze, and then I dumped a gallon of concentrate in. So that's my 50-50 mix. And then I took this one and I poured it into an empty one and made a 50-50 mix. And now I'm just filling it up. As the truck warms up, I backed it up to a spot that's not all wet on the ground, so I can make sure I don't have any leaks, which I didn't. Thank goodness. Actually started it up with just a 1 gallon of water in, so if I didn't have a major leak, I wasn't losing the liquid gold here. Who the heck, $39 for 2 gallons of antifreeze. Anyway, there's a lot of overcomplicated ways to fill these systems, and then people say, oh, you're supposed to bleed it. That's why there's that little bleeder hose thing, that little hose that went under the radiator hose. I've done these a shitload of times. I've poured enough gallons of the antifreeze into these leaky antifreeze heating LS motors that I've never had that issue. Just fill it up, drive it, top it off a couple days later, and you're good. So it's starting to warm up now. I'll feel the hose, see if the thermostat opens up, and I'm getting, so my upper hose is nice and warm. So the water is flowing, thermostat opens up, and this is on it down, and you can never read the levels on these things that are on the LS motors. The reservoir with your cap, your pressure cap. And what I would do is I do it about an inch above the halfway seam on the tank. Sometimes it's hard to see, so you put a little light on the side of the tank and you can see your level a little bit better. So that's what I'm going to do, and I'm just going to fill it up so that it gets just a little above halfway on the tank there. Try not to spill any. Come in from this side maybe. Try to overfill this one. A little spill. I use the universal coolant. Way I don't have to worry about green stuff, pink stuff, red stuff, whether it's the Chrysler cars or the GM cars or the one that says all cars is the one I like. I don't care what brand it is. The cheapest one that has a concentrate that says all cars is what I use. All right. Really no need to do this whole bleed procedure that people talk about online. I just gonna give it to my wife. She's gonna drive it back and forth to work all week, and then I'll check it next weekend. And if I have to add a little, I'll add a little, and then it'll self-bleed going through its heating and cooling cycles. Pretty simple. It was a little more difficult because I put that used water pump on that had the fan and the clutch and everything attached to it. When you have the naked water pump, it's really easy to go in there. Not a tough job at all. I mean, going slow, it shouldn't take you more than an hour and a half. steady on it, you're not talking to the video camera, you know, like under an hour, definitely. Even though you take a ton of stuff off to make the job easier, it's pretty fast and it goes back on pretty easy. That's it today from Max's Garage. Hope you enjoyed the video. I'll link everything we used today in the description below.